So, hi, everybody. You know me, Carol Kauffman, the founder of the Institute of Coaching with Margaret Moore and Susan David. And we're going to do something different today. A couple of things. I'm here with David Noble, who started out as a baby banker, then became a big banker, then became a strategist and managing partner in a bunch of very cool firms, and then a coach. And I'm here with the delightful Whitney Johnson, the CEO of Disruption Advisors and the author of, you can see her book in the background, Smart Growth, which is a great book. So here's what we're going to do differently. You know, I usually am here and I interview people, but today we're going to flip it around and Whitney is going to interview me and David Noble. And he is the first author. I'm the second author of Real-Time Leadership. But wait, there's more. This is a taster. It's a short taster, hopefully an appetizer, because David and I, on our book launch day, February 21st, 2021, will be doing a public webinar with the Institute for an hour and a half. So join us today, join us there, and Whitney, take us away.
Thank you, Carol. And I'm glad that you reminded everybody about the webinar because I was going to do that as well. So remember, February 21st, it's on their launch date. It's a really cool launch date, 2/21/23. So this is going to give you just a little bit of a glimpse of what they're going to talk about that day and obviously a little bit of what's in the book. So to start, I want to ask the very important question, and I'm going to go to you, David, which is, actually, no, I'm going to ask Carol. We're going to start with Carol, and then we're going to go to David. What is exactly real-time leadership?
Okay, so the book is called Real-Time Leadership, Find Your Winning Moves When the Stakes Are High. And what is real time? Real time is right now. So how can you have choices in this moment? I think of the quote, more or less, by Viktor Frankl that says, between every stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space, we can find our freedom and freedom of choice. So real-time leadership is just making that space bigger and bigger and bigger so we can walk and step into it. But then, okay, now I'm here, I've made space. Now what? And so our book gives you many, many ways to find out in that moment of choice, when you create that space, what should you be looking at? How should you be moving? What should we be seeing? What is it? So our book is Framework of Frameworks, and Marshall Goldsmith says our book is dense in a good way. And yet another friend of mine said, most leadership books make me fall asleep. This one woke me up. So real-time leadership is really being in the now, being agile, being able to transcend your reflexes. So that's it in a nutshell.
Okay, so we just had our first comment from Jaspal Bajwa. I know he is a big fan of yours, Carol, and probably David's as well. And Jaspal saying, looking forward to listening and learning. And Jaspal, we hope that you will ask some questions, actually grill David and Carol just a little bit about real-time leadership. And at the end, I'm going to ask the question, what was useful for you? So be thinking about that for everybody who's listening. So Carol, one of the things that's interesting to me is when you talk about this idea of real time, what are you going to do in real time? You describe something of almost like there's a bullseye of what's happening, which you see on the cover of your book. And you're saying your book helps you in part make this bullseye bigger. So this space in your brain where you have time to react is a little bit less daunting and more easy to then decide. Once you decide what you want to do, you have more time to do it. Is that accurate?
Yes. And one of the things we say is if you could slow time down, you know, if you think of athletes, they are able to subjectively do that, to slow time down so they can make an optimal choice. And then what next is, what optimal choice?
Okay, and we're going to go to that in just a minute. So before we ask David a question of when you're ready to move, what is the move model? Let's say hello to Melvina from New Jersey and Dr. Kayanush from Kayanush. Thank you. Oh, so you know her. Okay, so maybe you'll correct me on pronunciations. Karen, I think I can get that right. From Victoria, Canada, Eveline. She's saying hello, super fan of Dr. Kauffman, Brian, and Christiana. So David, tell us what the move model is. Once you slow down time and you're moving, what's happening?
Sure. Well, of course, we can't actually slow down time. We just make it seem like you can slow down time. So for us, real time leadership is really about making the most of every moment. So whether you have to make a split-second decision, whether you're working on something important this calendar quarter, or whether it's even a lifetime goal that you're kind of moving towards. And a lot of leaders try and make the most of every moment by really depending on the deep pattern recognition that they've created over the years. So if they see something like A happen and they see something like B happen, they kind of instinctively know that C is the right answer. And so they're relying on their reflexes. And that's fine for day-to-day operating environments, but when did we last see one of those? And then it's also not great to get better as a leader. You're just kind of relying on your reflex. And it also doesn't help you in facing novel types of crises or maybe even big 10x opportunities of a scale and scope that we haven't seen before. So what we do is, as Carol said, we help you create space, but then when you occupy that space, how do you become a peak performer? And that's our model called MOVE. It's an acronym, MOVE. So very quickly, M is for being mindfully alert. That's where you're seeming to slow down time.
Yeah. David, before you go through that in detail, I'm going to ask, as you all are listening, there are some people on here who are not native English speakers. So as you hear David talk through this model, the M, and I'm going to ask you to repeat it, will you all just type it in real time as we're going so that the people who don't speak English can capture it? Okay, David, back to you.
Okay, thanks for that, Whitney. So M is being mindfully alert. So that's what Carol called slowing down time. And what are we mindfully alert to? So for us, there are 3 dimensions of leadership. These are kind of your goals. So the first is the external goal, which is what is it that I need or want to achieve to get done? The second is what about my inner goal? Who do I want to be as a human in this moment as I'm leading? Do I want to cultivate listening, perspective, compassion? What is it about me as a human that I want to be as I'm leading? And the third dimension is called the interpersonal, which is how can I best relate to others to unlock their potential and achieve goals together? So those 3 things, the 3 dimensions of leadership together, are what you want to get done, who you want to be, and how you need to relate. So then how do we do that? That's O for options generator. And so many, many leaders have one pathway towards their goals, and we think that's fine. But most leaders don't have a backup plan unless it's mission critical or something where lives are at stake. Well, we believe you have to have not just willpower, but way power. You have to have 4 or more ways to win everything that you're trying to get done because of all the obstacles and curveballs that get thrown at you. The third element of the model is called V, and that's to validate your vantage point. So, unfortunately, a lot of us, me included, are not always living reality for what it is, but it's for what we hope or fear it might be. So I can exaggerate or discount opportunities and threats all day long, and I've got blind spots. So how can we start to see things more clearly and get help from others to make sure that we're not having any blind spots? Then E is about pulling all this thing together. What are your goals? What are the ways that we can achieve them? Are we doing a reality check? And E is for how to engage and affect change at scale as a leader. And that's sending all the right leadership signals. So are the leadership signals you're sending the same as the ones received or not? How do you make sure they are? And then over time, as you start to work together on things and you learn new things, you need to change your leadership signals to adjust to the conditions that you're operating in. So that's what the model's at, MOVE.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we've got M is for mindfully alert. We're going to ask Carol to repeat it back. O is for what? Options?
Options generator.
Option generator. Okay, V is for what, David?
Vantage point.
Okay, and E, Carol, is for?
Engage and effect change.
Yeah, you know what was interesting to me when I heard the engage piece, and then I'd love to hear from you, David, one of your favorite stories in the book, but is this idea of engage to affect change, this notion of communication. Do you have the ability to communicate your ideas and in a way that you can get buy-in so that you can affect the change across the organization? Is that how you're thinking about it?
Yeah, it's basically the most compact way you can articulate a mission so that you can decentralize it very broadly. And the idea is if the leader's not in the room with you, and if you're kind of facing conditions on your own, that you have the right decision framework, the right values framework that's going to be very aligned with the leader's mission so that you can act whether or not the leader's around.
I love that. The most compact way you can articulate the mission. Ooh, that's good. All right. So let me just see a couple of comments here, and then I'd love to hear one of your favorite stories. So just hold this question later is Jason's asking how you discovered the need for this book. So we'll come back to that question, Jason. It's a great question and always fun to hear the origin stories. Way Power, I love it. Celeste and Evelisa are weighing in. So what's one of your favorite stories from the book, David?
Oh, okay. So this is a story that kind of illustrates that really small changes in your leadership can have disproportionately positive impacts.
Okay.
So there's a kind of settling approach that Carol and I apply in the book, which is a way to help create space before you choose what you're going to do. And it's driven off of Dick Schwartz's original work. So we call it the 5 C's. So it's about stepping into understanding, like, how calm are you right now? How curious are you about new information, learning about yourself, an inclination to positive change? How compassionate are you towards yourself and others? How clear is your thinking, and how courageous are you? And that's kind of a very holistic statement of what's happening in your head, what's happening in your heart, and what's happening in your body. So we actually apply this. So I had one client that I was working with, first time I met him. We had 15 minutes before we went into a leadership team meeting that he'd invited me to. So I said, let's go through this. So scale of 1 to 10, 10 being very high, how calm are you right now? And he said, 10, I'm always calm. It's like, okay. Scale of 1 to 10, how curious are you? 10, I'm incredibly curious. I'm always learning about new things. How clear is your thinking right now? 10, I'm an unbelievably clear thinker. How courageous are you? 10, I'll take on anything, anytime, anywhere. Okay. Now let's just think about compassion. How compassionate are you right now towards yourself and then to people on the exco that we're going to be meeting with in a few moments? And silence. And he just said, I'm low on that. Wow. So it's like, okay, that's fine. So recognize where you're at on that. And can you visualize a moment when you were a 10 out of 10 on that? He said, yes, I'm thinking of my son. He's a great tennis player. Great. So we went into the meeting, and the CFO was resigning for personal reasons. And his father was in the last few months of his life, and he wanted to stay at home and look after him through the end of life. And in the middle of that, the CFO broke down and started to cry uncontrollably. And no one in that room knew what to do. So there was dead silence for probably a full 5 seconds, which is a lifetime. Yeah. And then the CEO got up out of his chair, walked over, sat down next to the CFO and said, we've got you, we understand. And in that moment, when we walked out of that room, the CEO said, I never would have thought of doing that. And that was exactly the right thing to do. And that was a game changer. Just a very, very small moment like that, creating such a disproportionately positive change. So that's what I love to do, like help unlock those moments in people.
Oh, I love that. So I have a question for you. So would you describe that in that moment when you asked him about the compassion, that was real-time leadership on your part?
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. It was like, how are we going to step into this, and where are you right now, and how am I relating to you? So it was more like, what do I want to get done? I wanted to settle in before the meeting. Who do I want to be? I wanted to be of service to him. How did I want to relate? I wanted to ask him a bunch of analytical questions in a way that he could relate to and answer, but still got to his emotions. So yeah, great perspective.
So good. Okay, I see people putting these in the chat. Thank you so much. Calm, curious, clear, courageous, compassionate. Perfect. And then Joss Paul saying, thanks for this MOVE. It's so elegant in its simplicity, yet so powerful. All right, Carol, yes. You're up. Tell us a story. One of your favorite stories.
Okay, well, I had planned to talk all about this CEO who was tanking in his meeting, But I instead decided I'm going to talk about myself.
Wait,
I want to know about it, right?
in real time? Are you making a real
I
time
made this
decision?
decision
Okay,
just at this moment.
let's do it.
All right. So what I'm going to say is like really kind of pathetic, which is I had a very tough conversation I had to have. So tough. I was like up at night. It was one of these conversations where it wasn't clear that the partnership would be able to continue. And someone had sent me an email about that and accidentally copied the very same person. Okay, so I'm at fault. I'm about to have this conversation and I'm dreading it. And then I thought, this is the pathetic part. Oh, why don't I use my own model and see how I can help? And then, of course, being stunned at the result. So it's actually made me much more excited about the book, which I really think is so ridiculous. That said, I'm about to have the meeting. I'm in dread. So I get out my pad of paper and we think that one of the first ways, it's just coincidental we're both doing this approach, but we think like one of the first ways to get into make that space so you can then think about your leadership choices and how you're going to do things, etc., are the 5 C's. So I wrote down, okay, the first C, calm. That's usually for me the first one to go. And so I thought, okay, what can I do to increase the likelihood of my being calm? And so I thought, okay, I'm going to breathe. I'm going to think in advance of what might trigger me and sort of, kind of go through it in my head. And so, okay, so I'm going to breathe. I'm going to remember, I've had conversations like this before that have gone well. So, okay, calm. Clear. That's the next thing I lose, which is, I once had a huge fight with someone, and when they were done yelling at me, and they were also in the right, by the way, it was at cleaning up a kitchen in grad school, to which I said, I know I have a point. I just have no idea what it is. So my brain can go. So I don't really, in this situation, want that to happen. So to be clear, I just wrote down some things like these are my main points so I can hang on to it. And so, okay, I felt settled on clear. Then curious. So then I was thinking about, okay, I'm going to get an onslaught here because I really was in part in the wrong. I mean, it's real easy to be fabulous when you're in the right, but when you're in the wrong, it's not so easy. And I thought, well, when I hear what I'm going to hear, I'm going to just make sure to stay curious. And David often says what to do in that moment is just ask one more question. Okay. Then compassionate. Well, how can I really walk over to the bridge to where this person was and appreciate the world and me from their perspective and then walk back over the bridge, but not lose my courageousness. Like I'm allowed to pick my partners and to find my voice. Okay. Those are the C's. Now, I'm not going to go through all of the rest of the model unless, oh, guys, that's right. February 21st, you can come back and get the hour-and-a-half version. Forgot. Okay.
Now,
so
see how you did that, everybody? Okay, go ahead.
I thought I was going to forget, and I've remembered twice, so
Yeah,
I'm
good
proud of
job.
myself. So then the dimensions of leadership, then I thought about, wait a minute, what is it I really want to accomplish? Which is really also what brought to my mind was, what is it I want to make sure not to accomplish? That is a really good question. So again, first you make space with the 5 C's or whatever part of the model works for you. Then what is it you need to achieve? And the thing for me is I realized that a part of me, what I wanted to do was just spell out why all this stuff had just increased my stress level and this and that. I'm like, that is not what I want to do. What I want to do is sort of take ownership for my piece and come to a great solution. Second dimension of leadership, did I have the internal emotional regulation? Have I invested enough in my own growth so I could do it? And then can I remember that the platinum rule that I need to talk to this person as they need to be talked to, not me?
Yeah.
Then I won't go into it now, but then all the kind of options available. And what happened is she got on the phone and was distressed and very angry at me, appropriately so. And then said, and this was pivotal. She then said, well, listen, we shouldn't even have this conversation. I'm just not going to have it at all. I'm just going to be defensive. Let's just end it right here. And then curiosity came in. So I said, so wait a minute, let's take defensiveness. Just put that to the side for a minute. You're not being defensive. Tell me more what it is. And as she did, our relationship like repaired itself in real time. And she went from angry and feeling betrayed by me, understandably, to really solid. And she entered a peak performance state. And I just watched it happen. And if I hadn't used my own model in real time, it could have been a disaster. And we even talked about it later to say, you know, we really made this through a kind of conversation that could be a deal breaker for people. And our relationship is stronger.
So the model works is what you're saying.
Yeah, if you apply it to yourself, yes.
Yeah, especially when you apply it to yourself. So one of the curiosities that I'm having as I'm listening to you is when I think about the 5 C's, my brain is going to, if I go MOVE, and maybe it's not in that linear fashion, but I think of the 5 C's as plugging in on the mindfully alert axis. Is that generally where you would put it, or is that something that plugs in along all points of the model? David, what are your thoughts?
Well, we wanted to get into a technical discussion of what's a meta tool and what's not, but basically we put it into M, but it really applies to all stages of the model. So when you're setting your goals, yes, settle yourself with the 5 C's. When you're creating options, definitely settle yourself so you're creating a range of viable options. When you're looking at vantage point, settle yourself so that you're not being unnecessarily triggered. And when you're engaging and trying to affect change at scale, settle yourself in that so that you can really effectively decentralize the mission.
So basically in the cocoon or the cushion of the C's. So I see sort of some type of visual being created. Okay, so a couple of questions that people have, and I want to just comment. LinkedIn user says, tell us what your name is so we can say this, but Carol at her vulnerable best, sharing a personal example of her own model in action that anchors the model. Thank you. Thank you for your openness. Such a great example about how to walk our talk. Robin saying, courageous. Jorge saying, you walk the talk. So fun. Okay, and then we have calm, curious, clear, courageous, compassionate.
Oh, I want to say one thing.
Yes.
Herb talks about that this is based on internal family systems model, and he's right. We have both worked with Richard Schwartz, and we just thought 8 C's was too much for people to remember. So we went to 4, but then we thought we had to add courage.
Got it. Okay. All right. So let's go with some of these questions. Actually, you know what? We're going to go with Just Files that just popped up. So is there a way to learn? Is there a way to learn from terms we often hear about beginner's mind or no mind?
David.
Oh, I love that. So I'm a Vipassana meditator and I go to retreats, and it's all about beginner's mind. So I think that's wonderful because, the quote is basically that the expert knows one way and the beginner knows many ways. So
I love that.
That is something to cultivate. And I think that we need to cultivate, because when we talk about reflexes, that sort of seeing A happen and B happen and then know that C is the right answer, well, that's where you break that, where you see A, you see B, and maybe you look for F and G and H, and then you challenge it. And then you see what that might mean. And then you talk to other people about what that might mean and see how you might be wrong, see how you might keep diverging and seeing a bigger picture, more options, more potential pathways, more answers. So beginner's mind is actually absolutely crucial. And even for the work that we do around self-awareness and self-regulation, that curiosity about asking that one more question, that's part of beginner's mind. So it's not assuming that you have the answer, even if you've done this a million times before, but each moment is new and fresh for us, and let's make it that way.
So good. All right, Carol, we've got about 6 minutes to go. I want to ask you the question that someone asked earlier, which is, what role do you see coaching playing in real-time leadership for both the coach and the coachee? Kind of open-ended, but let's see where you take it.
Well, right at the intersection. So I think coaching can really benefit from this model. Now, you don't need to take your client through the MOVE unless your client is an ISTJ, and that is what they want. But it's so what we want you to do. So the book is really quite detailed. Each chapter is like an operating model with very specific questions. So you can read it and then as a coach kind of internalize all of the frameworks and then just see what happens in the moment. But it's useful, I think, to coach yourself.
Mm.
And it's useful even just as a framework to have in the back of your mind. You've got the 3 C's. You've got lean in, lean back, don't lean, lean with. You've got 4 options here. Then, am I seeing it clearly? From here. So I think it can be more like an operating model. And Harvard, books published by Harvard Business Review, and they have actually asked us to do a workbook. So I and Douglas Chu and David are working on a workbook where you can really sort of take yourself through checklists of this and then take your clients through that.
Yeah. Well, one thing you're bringing up for me, and maybe Austin can put a link in the comments, is your article that was in HBR on the options generator. And I know I have shared that with a number of my CEO coaching clients, and they have found that very useful. And that's, what's amazing is back to your comment, David, about MetaTools. That's just one of the many tools that you have in this book as part of the bigger model of MOVE. Okay, so as we, Jason asked at the very beginning, why this book? And I'm going to toss it over to you, David, and then we'll start to go to closing comments. And as you're answering this, and so I want all of you to multitask, which we all know you can't actually do, but listen to David, but then also start thinking about what's been useful to you in this conversation. What's one thing that your brain is just saying, and you want to take away. So David, why this book?
So look, in my very first job, I wrote a speech for a very senior executive who said, and this was a while ago, that the pace of change and uncertainty is unprecedented. And, I've been hearing that ever since, and I've been operating in it. And so everyone that I know has been operating in it. And I just thought through my own experience as an operating executive and as a strategist and now as a leadership advisor, and all the great work that Carol and I have done together and learned together, that this was an opportunity to kind of crystallize what we had to say and to give voice to something that's really just confined right now to top of the house. And we wanted to spread the word and have this accessible to every leader, every aspiring leader, and also individual contributors.
So you wanted to codify the work that you've been doing, the frameworks that you have, that you've been able to put in the C-suite, but really be able to democratize it so a lot more people have access to it.
Great way to put it. Yeah.
Wonderful. Carol, any final comments from you?
Nah.
Yeah, you're good. All right. So everyone,
excuse me, not
oh, you actually do. Okay.
Of course I do.
Okay. Go ahead.
My husband always says, if people don't realize you're being funny, then you're not being funny. Case in
Shout
point.
out to Carol's husband on the comments. Okay.
Well, for me, I just hope people will first really practice this. And one of the best ways, I'd like to leave you guys with one question, which is from the second dimension of leadership. So today, as you go through your day today, and if you're in China tomorrow, ask yourself, who do I want to be right now? When you hit a situation, who do I want to be right now? So someone cuts you off in traffic. Who do you want to be right now? Somebody hands you a report. It's really not okay. Who do you want to be right now? So keep asking yourself that question. And literally, I've done it a couple times, 80 times a day. It works best with crankiness, by the way. But it also can just really, it's just a split-second question, and it can just make just this little tiny openness that gives you a shocking amount of choice.
Okay, so David.
That's my last word.
I love it. Okay, so I'm going to, David, who do you want to be right now?
Who do I want to be right now? I want to be in service to my next client who's coming up in 1 minute.
Okay, so with that, hey everybody, I'm going to turn it over to Carol in just a minute. A reminder, I know I just saw Evelyn ordered the book and you just made David and Carol's hearts sing. Pre-order it because the hardcover, because what that will mean is if you pre-order it, it will contribute to the book being able to be on the Wall Street Journal bestseller list. And as you can imagine, if it's on the Wall Street Journal bestseller list, more people know about it and they can democratize these ideas. With that, thank you everybody for your wonderful participation. And I'm going to turn it back over to Carol to close us out.
Hi, everybody. As you can see, Whitney's such a purpose-driven leader that, Whitney, we can't see you, by the way.
Oh,
Everybody, thank you for being here. Thank you for being with us in your comments. Continue if you want to kind of make more comments about what is the one thing that stuck with you from today, and apply it. And on February 21st, please come join us. You will know a lot more about the model than some of the others. And of course, buy the book.
buy the book, everyone. Thank you.
Hardback, Amazon. Yes, help us.
Take care.
Thank you, everybody.